My name is Alaric Boone. I'm 72 years old, and I made a decision that changed everything. I will not spend these years living by someone else's script. After 7 decades of listening to what society says an old man should be, I finally drew a line in the sand. There are 12 things I simply refuse to do after 70, and each one has given me back a piece of freedom I thought I had lost. Some of my choices may shock you, because they go against tradition. Others might upset you, because they challenge what people believe aging should look like. But every word comes from my life, and every refusal is proof that it's never too late to claim yourself again. 1. I refuse to shrink myself. I refuse to shrink myself. I remember one evening at a family dinner, the table full of laughter and stories, when I began to share something about my old teaching days. Before I could finish, someone interrupted. Then another voice rose louder, and suddenly my words vanished into the noise. I sat there with my fork paused in mid-air, realizing how easy it was for the world to push me into silence just because I'd crossed into my 70s. That night I made a quiet promise to myself: my voice does not retire. My stories, my opinions, my presence, they carry weight, and they deserve space. Too often, society tells us to fade politely into the background as we age. People expect seniors to sit quietly in the corner, to nod along while others make decisions. But I won't. I speak up in doctors' offices, I share my thoughts at family gatherings, and I let my laughter be loud enough to fill a room. And the truth is, when I finally stopped shrinking myself, something surprising happened. People started listening. My grandchildren lean in when I tell them about the world before smartphones. My neighbors ask for my advice on small-town issues. Even strangers at community events look at me differently when I stand tall and refuse to whisper my life away. If you're over 60, you know how easy it is to feel invisible. But I want you to hear me clearly. Your voice matters as much now as it ever did. Don't let age reduce you to silence. Have you ever felt yourself being overlooked? Tell me in the comments, because your story deserves to be heard too. 2. I refuse to say yes out of guilt. I refuse to say yes out of guilt. For years, I believed that being a good father and grandfather meant never turning down a request. My daughter would call on Friday evenings, asking if I could watch the kids the next day. Without hesitation, I always said yes. At first, I didn't mind. Those little faces brought me joy. But as the months rolled on, I noticed my Saturdays disappearing. The paints and brushes I kept on my easel collected dust. My weekends were no longer mine. They belonged to everyone else's schedules. And deep down, I wasn't saying yes out of love. I was saying yes because I felt guilty that if I refused, I'd somehow be less needed, less valued. One morning, I looked at the half-finished canvas in my studio, the sunlight hitting it just right, and I felt something stir inside me. That was the moment I realized. Love and guilt are not the same thing. Saying no does not mean I love my family any less. It means I also love myself enough to protect my time. So the next time my daughter asked, I gently told her no, that I needed this Saturday for me. I half expected disappointment or anger, but instead, she understood. To my surprise, she admired my honesty. And I finally picked up my brush again, colors flowing onto the canvas like they had been waiting for me all along. If you're over 60, maybe you've felt this too, the pull to say yes, even when your heart is begging for rest. I want you to know, it's not selfish to set boundaries. It's survival. Have you ever agreed to something only because you felt guilty? Share your story in the comments, because saying no might be the very thing that brings you back to life. 3. I refuse to let doctors rush me. I refuse to let doctors rush me. I'll never forget the day I went in for a routine checkup. The doctor was moving so quickly, eyes glued to his computer screen, fingers flying across the keyboard, that he nearly skipped over my blood pressure reading. "Looks fine," he said, already half out the door. But something didn't feel right. I insisted he check again. This time the numbers were dangerously high. If I hadn't spoken up, that moment could have changed my life forever. That was the day I learned a painful truth. In today's medical system, if you don't demand to be heard, you can easily get lost in the shuffle. Now, I never walk into an appointment unprepared. I carry a small notebook with my symptoms, questions, and even dates of when things began. I make eye contact. I slow the conversation down. And if I feel brushed aside, I don't hesitate to ask, "Can you please explain that again?" Or even, "I'm not comfortable ending this visit yet." I've learned that my health is too precious to be treated like an item on a checklist. Doctors may be busy, but that doesn't mean my concerns are less important. For anyone over 60, I want you to hear me. You are the expert on your own body. You know when something feels off. Don't let a rushed appointment silence your instincts. Prepare, speak up, and don't leave until your questions are answered. Have you ever felt dismissed in a doctor's office? Tell me in the comments, because your story might encourage another senior to fight for the care they deserve. 4. I refuse to stop learning tech. I refuse to stop learning tech. When the world shifted online, I felt the gap between myself and younger generations grow wider. My grandchildren swiped and tapped screens like second nature, while I stared at buttons wondering which one would make everything disappear. For a while I told myself, this isn't for me. I'm too old to learn all this. But then I saw a flyer for a virtual painting group that met on Zoom. Something in me wanted to try, so I swallowed my nerves, set up my laptop and logged in. My hands were shaking as I clicked through, half expecting the screen to go black, or my microphone to betray me. But then there they were, artists from California to London, each with a canvas in the background, smiling at me as if I belonged. That night I painted with strangers who quickly became friends. We shared brushstrokes, techniques, and even little stories from our lives. Technology didn't just connect us, it gave me a community I didn't even know I needed. Since then, I've learned to use video calls, digital art tools, and even social media to share my work. And you know what? Every click, every mistake, every oops, how do I undo this was worth it. Because learning tech didn't make me feel younger. It made me feel alive, relevant, and part of the world again. If you're over 60, don't let fear of technology keep you from connection. Every app you learn, every new tool you try, is another doorway to friendship, learning, and freedom. Have you ever surprised yourself by figuring out a piece of tech? Share it in the comments, because your courage might inspire another senior to take that first click. 5. I refuse to spend my days only waiting. I refuse to spend my days only waiting. There was a time when my calendar felt like it belonged to everyone else but me. Doctor's visits, pharmacy pickups, errands, and long stretches of sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. I woke up each morning with no spark, just a list of obligations and an ache in my chest that whispered, "Is this all there is left?" That routine nearly convinced me that aging meant life had slowed to a crawl. But one afternoon, as I sat in the waiting room flipping through an old magazine, I realized I had spent more time waiting than actually living. That realization stung, and it pushed me to change. Now, instead of measuring my weeks by appointments, I sprinkle in small adventures. On Tuesday mornings, I take a walk through the garden, noticing which flowers survived the night. Sometimes I pack a sandwich and head to the local pier to fish, even if I catch nothing but quiet. On weekends, I wander into the library, not because I need a book, but because stories still have a way of lifting my spirit. These aren't grand vacations or bucket list items. They're simple acts of choosing life over limbo. And you know what? The appointments still happen, but they no longer define me. If you're over 60, I want you to ask yourself, are you living or are you just waiting? Every small choice, whether it's a walk, a hobby, or a new experience, reclaims time that would otherwise slip through your fingers. Tell me in the comments, what small adventure brings you joy? Because sometimes, the smallest moments remind us we're still fully alive. 6. I refuse to apologize for joy. I refuse to apologize for joy. One summer afternoon, I dragged my old record player out to the porch and dropped the needle on a Duke Ellington album. The brass filled the air, bold and unapologetic, just the way I remembered from my younger days. I let the music spill into the yard, and before I knew it, my feet were tapping, my body swaying, and I was laughing out loud at the sheer thrill of it. A couple of neighbors walking by chuckled and called out, "Turn it down, Boone, you're too old to be carrying on like that." For a moment, I felt that familiar sting of embarrassment, like maybe I was being foolish. But then I caught myself. Why should I mute the very thing that makes me feel alive? So instead of lowering the volume, I cranked it up and twirled right there in the grass, my laughter mixing with the trumpet's swing. That day taught me a powerful lesson. Joy doesn't need permission. Too many seniors hide their happiness, afraid of being judged as silly or childish. But joy is not childish, it's a birthright. I won't apologize for singing too loud, laughing too long, or dancing when no one else hears the music. Those moments are what keep my heart young, even if my bones creak. And strangely enough, the very neighbors who teased me ended up smiling and clapping along. If you're over 60, I want to remind you, don't shrink your happiness to make others comfortable. When you laugh, laugh fully. When you feel joy, let it be seen. Have you ever held back your happiness because you worried what people might say?
Share your story below, because every ripple of joy you release might give another person permission to do the same.
7. I refuse to leave a cluttered burden. I refuse to leave a cluttered burden. When my brother passed, I was the one who had to sort through his house. What I thought would be a weekend task stretched into weeks of dusty boxes, yellowed papers, and drawers crammed with things no one remembered owning. Every corner felt like a maze of someday items, old receipts, broken radios, clothes that hadn't been touched in decades. And with every box I opened, I felt the weight of grief grow heavier. It wasn't just clutter, it was a burden. One my brother never meant to leave behind, but did all the same. I loved him dearly, but in those long hours of sorting, I whispered to myself, I will not do this to my children. That promise has shaped my days ever since. I began walking through my own home with new eyes. Did I really need 6 coffee mugs for one man? Did those old coats hanging in the closet serve any purpose but dust? Slowly, piece by piece, I started letting go. It wasn't about throwing memories away. It was about choosing which ones mattered most and making peace with releasing the rest. And as I cleared, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. My home grew calmer, my mind clearer. Decluttering stopped being a chore and became a gift to myself today and to my family tomorrow. If you're over 60, I urge you to think about the legacy you're leaving. Do you want your loved ones sorting through piles of forgotten things, or walking through a home filled only with the treasures that truly tell your story? Have you ever faced the painful task of clearing a loved one's clutter? Share in the comments, because your honesty might inspire someone else to start releasing today. 8. I refuse to ignore my dreams. I refuse to ignore my dreams. For most of my life, I told myself that my dreams were luxuries, things to be set aside while I worked, raised children, and paid bills. I always carried one quiet wish, though, to create a small book of my paintings, something that would outlive me and speak in colors long after my voice was gone. But year after year, I pushed it aside with excuses. Not now. Too busy. Too late. Then, at 71, I stood in front of my easel and thought, if not now, when? That day, I began sketching the first pages of the book I had imagined for decades, and with every stroke, I felt myself reclaiming something I thought I had lost, the right to dream, no matter my age. What I've learned is this: dreams don't expire. The calendar may change, the hair may grey, the joints may stiffen, but the fire inside us doesn't care about numbers. Starting late is still starting. I may never see my book in a big bookstore, but I will see it take shape in my own hands, and that is enough. The joy isn't in the recognition. It's in knowing I didn't let the dream die with me. If you're over 60, I want you to remember, it's not too late to pick up the pen, the paintbrush, the guitar, or the passport. Whatever dream has been whispering to you, give it breath. Don't bury it under fear or what-ifs. Tell me in the comments, what's one dream you've been holding on to? Because your story could remind someone else that they are never too old to begin again. 9. I refuse to fear the mirror. I refuse to fear the mirror. For years I avoided it. I would shave quickly without lifting my eyes, or walk past my reflection in a window pretending not to notice. Every wrinkle felt like a reminder of time gone, every sag a signal that youth had packed up and left me behind. One morning, though, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror, and instead of turning away, I forced myself to look closer. And what I saw wasn't shame. It was a story. Each line across my face was proof of survival, laughter that left creases around my eyes, sleepless nights I endured, storms I weathered and lived to tell. That morning I decided to change my ritual. Now, every day, I pause at the mirror and name one thing I appreciate about myself. Sometimes it's my silver hair that shines under the light. Sometimes it's the steadiness of my hands, still able to hold a brush. And sometimes it's simply the fact that I'm here, alive, still standing. Aging has a way of making people feel invisible, like they must cover up or apologize for every mark the years have left. But I refuse to see my reflection as an enemy. My face is not a failure, it's my autobiography, written line by line in ink no one can erase. And strangely enough, the more I practice gratitude in the mirror, the lighter I feel walking into the world. If you're over 60, I encourage you to try it. Stand in front of the mirror tomorrow morning and name one feature you admire. Say it out loud. Let yourself hear it. Because when we stop fearing the mirror, we stop fearing life itself. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you see in yourself that makes you proud? 10. I refuse to stay silent on money. I refuse to stay silent on money. One afternoon, I opened my email and saw a message claiming to be from my bank. It looked convincing. The logo was there, the wording formal, but something felt off. They asked me to confirm my account details immediately. My gut told me to pause. Instead of clicking, I called the bank directly. And sure enough, it was a scam. The thought chilled me. If I had gone along, my savings, decades of work, could have vanished with one careless click. That night, I shared the story at my senior group, showing them exactly what the email looked like. The room grew quiet. Then one woman whispered, "I got the same message yesterday." If I had stayed silent, she might have fallen for it. That's when it hit me. Silence is how they win. Money is a topic many older adults avoid out of embarrassment or pride. We whisper about it, afraid to admit mistakes or ask questions. But that silence makes us vulnerable. Scammers count on us being too polite, too trusting, or too quiet. I refuse to play into their hands. Now, whenever I hear about a scam, a bad deal, or even a confusing financial choice, I speak up. I'd rather feel a little awkward in the moment than let someone else lose what they worked their whole life to build. If you're over 60, remember this. Your money is your freedom, and protecting it is nothing to be ashamed of. Don't stay quiet. Warn a friend. Share your story. Ask the question. Have you ever spotted a scam or caught something suspicious? Tell me in the comments. Your voice might be the reason someone else doesn't lose everything. 11. I refuse to live only in the past. I refuse to live only in the past. When my wife passed, I found myself drifting into memories like they were the only place I still belonged. I would sit in her favorite chair, clutching the sweater she used to wear, replaying our life together in my mind until the hours slipped away. At first I told myself it was love, but slowly I realized I was drowning, not in her memory, but in my own regret. Regret for the words I didn't say often enough, for the trips we never took, for the little moments I thought would last forever. The past became a trap, and it nearly stole my present. One spring morning, standing in the backyard, I noticed the rose bushes she had planted years before. Most were overgrown, some nearly dead. That day, I picked up my gloves and began to tend them. It became a ritual. Every year I plant new roses in her honor. The garden now blooms with her spirit, but it also reminds me that love doesn't belong only to yesterday. It can be carried into today, into tomorrow. I still cherish her memory, but I refuse to let it lock me in place. Instead, I choose to live forward, carrying her presence with me into new experiences, new friendships, even new laughter. If you're over 60, you know how heavy the past can feel. But I want you to remember this. Honoring what was doesn't mean sacrificing what still can be. Plant something new, take a step forward, give yourself permission to keep living. Have you ever found a way to honor the past while still embracing the present? Share it in the comments, because your story might help someone else find their way back to life. As the light of morning spills across the room, I sit with my brush in hand, adding the final strokes to a canvas of a rising sun. Each shade of orange and gold feels like a reminder that a new day belongs to me, no matter my age. People often talk about aging as if it's a slow fading, a quiet surrender, but I refuse to fade quietly. These years are not defined by what I've lost. They're defined by what I will not give up. My dignity, my joy, and my freedom. Every choice I've made, every refusal I've declared, has opened a door to living more fully, not less. I know some may find my words bold, maybe even uncomfortable. But if my story has struck a chord with you, if even one of my refusals made you pause and think, then I ask you to act. Hit that like button right now because it tells YouTube this message matters. Share this video with a friend over 60 who might need encouragement today. And don't forget to subscribe to Better Aging Advice, because our golden years aren't about slowing down, they're about discovering the strength still burning inside us. Every sunrise I paint reminds me of one truth: the best years aren't behind us. They're alive, right here, in the choices we make to live with courage, laughter, and light. So don't fade, refuse, and choose life all over again.